this is David for Big Bits, and in this video we're going to take a look at using gradients when we're doing our fills between our different lines on our plots. And in the last couple of videos we've talked about doing fills between two different lines or two different plots, and they have been rather basic, and some are based on different conditions on what color they should be, and I've kind of carried the idea of the conditional fill over. Maybe not so much with when the fill shows up like we did with the RSI, but the condition of what color it's going to be. But there's also another condition that we're adding on here, is what color the fill should be within that particular candle. Now, this isn't something that's terribly easy to do if you're trying to figure this out on your own. I played around with it myself, but there's a group of people called Pine Coders. They have their own website, and they have a lot of great resources on Pine. And I'm going to show you something that they did that I learned a lot about for the gradients that we're using here when I decided to look at the gradients. Now, you'll see they have a public script. Now, there's a link to it in the description of the video, so if you're curious about that, you can go down and see that now. While you're down there, like the video, please. What they're doing is they are returning a hex color value, and this is an alpha RGB, so it returns a red, green, blue, and an alpha value, which is transparency value essentially for a color. And you use hexadecimal values, or whatever the mode is here. I believe it's hexadecimal, but anyway, you return this color code instead of actually telling it a color like color.red like we did in the past. We're going to use this code. We're going to use these functions that they created to return a color code. Now, the functions that they have return a different color code based on the number you put into the function. Now, if you're having a hard time reading this code, it's likely because they use their coding standards that they've come up with, and if you go to their website, they actually have a page dedicated to this, and I'll link that in the description of the video. We'll cover this a little bit later about what they're actually doing here, but if you've been following me and you're not an advanced or an intermediate programmer by any means, it might be a little bit harder for you to read than looking at how I've done the code in the past, to where it's a lot more simple and straightforward, to where we're using, full words instead of, lowercase, underscore, and then different, essentially code words to help developers know what they're actually looking at. So what we're taking from this, we're not taking anything else. What we're going to be taking from this one is the function for the lime color and the red color. And when we pass in a number, we're going to pass in anything, well, essentially any number, but what we're really wanting to focus on is the numbers 1 through 10. Now, anything above 9 returns this particular color. Otherwise, we start looking for the other ones. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to repeat. So we're going to go through the list, and then we're going to circle back through the list while it's supposed to be green. And we're going to do the same thing with red. So the first thing I've done is I've created our script over here. You can see we have this repeating gradient. There's nothing special about it that's related to the actual script we're working with. There is no real value in the color here other than it's green or red. It just is kind of aesthetically slightly more pleasing, I suppose, than if it were just red or green. So let's go ahead and take a look at the script here and slide this up. So you'll notice I have pulled those functions over. We aren't going to be using any of these, so you can just kind of ignore those. I just wanted to show you we replaced well, we've copied that code over from this one, and this is in the script. I'm not going to publish this script because, like I mentioned, I'm putting a link for their actual script in the video description, so you'll be able to get to the content that way. So what I have done to get it to repeat and use these different values is I have actually focused on using the values that it is focused on, 1 through 10, I should say. And what I'm going to do to repeat it is we have to start with 1, count up to 10, and then once we get to 10, we need to start counting down back to 1, and we need to loop that over and over every single candle to make this nice repeating pattern. Now, the first thing we do is we create a float called the color value. Now, I use cval for the color value because this is going to return either our numbers 1 through 10. Okay, it's going to return either of those numbers 1 through 10. And we also come up with another one called float direction up. Now there is a reason I use up, and this is a float instead of a boolean, and that has to do with how the script works. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to carry over those values from the previous candles. So if it didn't exist before, then we're going to start it at 1, and otherwise we're going to return the previous value. So now that we know the direction we were going and the value of the previous candle, whether it was 1 through 10, we can start with our actual logic of looping through this every candle. So let's go through here as if it's the first time running the script. We have a 0 and a 0 here. So the first one, okay, nothing actually exists, so the first value is actually going to be 1. And that means that our color value is going to be 1. So when we call the color value function, it's going to return this value because it is not greater than 1. Now, the direction up is also going to be 1 on the first candle because it didn't have anything before it. So it's going to start counting up with the value 1, and let's see how that actually works. So first we're going to check if the direction is up. If it is up plus 1, is that greater than 10? Because if we're counting up past 10, it really does us no good. We need to turn around at that point. So if it is, we set our value back to 10. We leave it at 10, but we change our direction to 0. Then it's just going to break out of this, and because it uses an else statement, and then it's going to go down, it's going to plot our moving averages, so the top and bottom lines here, not the fill. Then it's going to, of course, like I said, it's going to plot those, and it uses this color code for it to be fully transparent, so you don't actually see it. You don't actually see the color of the actual lines going around it. Now we call our fill function, but where we would call our color, we're actually going to be doing a conditional statement. So if our MA1 is greater than MA2, it's going to be green. We know that. So we'll call our green function, but we'll then pass in our color value into the green function, and it's going to return the proper color based on where we are at in the loop. So that's how we get the colors to change from nearly transparent to very opaque back to transparent again. And of course the opposite would be true if we were counting down and we subtracted 1 and that would have been less than 1. Then we stop it at 1 and we change the direction. And otherwise, if there isn't a need for a direction change, you just continue adding on to the color value and you keep the direction the same, or subtract and keep the direction the same. So that's pretty much going to cover it for what I wanted to talk about in this video. I wanted to keep it kind of short because in the next video we're going to continue on with the gradients, but we're actually going to focus on a slightly different approach than what the pinecoder function has to actually tell you how strong the current fill is compared to previous fills. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the maximum percentage change since the crossover, and then comparative to the maximum fill distance. We're going to then calculate the percentage transparency it needs, and with that transparency, then we can, keep it this more opaque color for longer here, and then once it starts to get a bit more narrow, be a little bit more transparent. Then if it were to get wider again, it would get more opaque as it would approach the maximum width of the fill. So it's very similar to what they have here, but I believe it's a bit different because they focus on using a center line. And honestly, there's a lot going on here where it's really not entirely necessary, in my opinion, and it's kind of intimidating for those of you watching. So I definitely want to give them credit for posting this and all the great resources they have available, and definitely check out those links for them in the description. Otherwise, you can also check out my TradingView profile, where I have a lot of scripts posted. You can see there's several down there. We've got quite a few followers now, so check out the TradingView profile. You can see all the scripts we've done in the tutorial series. So if you like this video and you like the Pine Script tutorial stuff, definitely check out those videos, but please subscribe, because you're going to get notifications when there are new tutorial videos. And I also cover some other things, such as other crypto related projects, because I'm a fan, and that's what I like to do on this channel. But thank you for staying around, and if you are and you have been following the channel and you're still thinking about getting a paid subscription to TradingView to unlock some of their features, please consider using the promo code in the description of the video, so that you can get $30 and I can get $30 as well towards an upgraded plan when it comes time for me to renew. And then of course that also helps you as well. But other than that, I think that's it for this video. You can look forward to another one very soon, and I thank you and have a nice day.